Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for Reconstructing Truth. I'm Aaron, this is Caleb. We're grateful to be back with you guys for the holiday season. But as we get started, we want to encourage you to, again, like and subscribe if you come across this episode. Be sure to subscribe, comment, leave reviews, things like that. Help us to grow this platform. Obviously, you found us. You realize we're on a different channel if you were catching us on the Cedar Point Recovery channel before. But as we grow this, we encourage you, as always, to share it, but even more intentionally share this to let people know that it's moved. It's on a new location, new channel. So again, that's Reconstructing Truth, just in case you were confused about what you're doing with your time right now.
What is this thing I'm listening to?
Yeah. But just a reminder, the things that we want to do here is we just want to touch on culture, we want to touch on doctrine, and just kind of share those things with you, share God's truth with you. So we hope that it's one of these things that just bless you, especially during the magic of the holiday season. So,
it is so magical.
It is so magical.
It's so magical, we all dread it.
Yeah. But today we're actually we're going to start a new kind of series throughout the rest of the year, or most of the rest of the year, and we're going to talk about some Christmas doctrine. It sounds exciting. I know you're like, oh man, this is going to be riveting.
Yeah.
If that was your reaction, it absolutely will be.
You hadn't yet doctrine.
And if you don't know what doctrine is, well, you're an idiot. No, I'm joking. But it's just kind of those truths and things of theology that we kind of build our faith around, and so we do want to touch on those. And so, especially coming into Christmas, once again, we're reminded of the secularization of the Christmas story and of Christmas time, the absence of Jesus in any part of the story, and how culture is inundated with all of these marketing ploys, essentially, that are absent any type of truth. And I believe that's the reason so many of us do have dread during the holiday season, because it's lost its appeal because it's lost Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, it's just part and parcel with our culture today, and that everything that we were founded on, and the principles in which our culture originally came from, like I said, Judeo-Christian beliefs and culture principles. Somehow we have found a way to take every single one of those things away, even the one where that's very obviously a Christian holiday, which is Christmas. And now we've tried, culture has done its best to strip away every last piece of whatever that is, as far as a Christian holiday goes, and and so that just reflects the society in which we live in, and that as we move away from those things, and then in our everyday lives, and obviously we're going to try to strip away anything that reminds us of that, even when it's very blatantly a Christian holiday. And so getting back to that as Christians and understanding what these things mean, and understanding why we do this or why we celebrate this, what makes us different, what makes us unique as far as the faith goes. That's what we're going to be talking about when we come to these, like I said, kind of going the next few weeks talking about Christmas, talking about Jesus, talking about the birth of Jesus, and all the kind of, like I said, when you start to think about it, what makes it special, what makes it unique, what makes it, it's more than just, why did, what's the importance of having, God in human form on earth, coming to justify us back to God? Why is that different than other faiths? Why does that matter? And all this stuff, in the grand scheme of things, is what we're getting back to. Is it helps firm up our faith, helps us to understand what it is we believe. That's what doctrine is. What do you believe? What are the kind of the principles of your faith, and why does that matter? And because when we start to face these hard questions, this is the whole premise behind our podcast here, is that when you're facing these tough questions, facing the tough, people pushing back on Christianity, which we're experiencing so much today, you need to be prepared. That's what the Bible tells us. Always be prepared to offer an answer to the hope that lies within you. And so we need to understand that, Christmas is more than just, we need to understand more of what is Christmas as far as like, it's not just Jesus in a manger, but what does that mean? Like why does it matter? Why do the specifics in the gospel story, why does that matter? And so we're going to be talking about that over the next few weeks.
Yeah. And so as we were kind of talking kind of offline, we were talking about some of the Christmas movies coming out and some that have come out. And I'll be honest, if I'm being real with you, I've recently watched a movie. It came out last year, Violent Night. Obviously, Jesus is nowhere in that movie. And I enjoyed that, but obviously it's not what Christmas is about. It's quite ridiculous. And then Eddie Murphy, we were kind of talking, neither one of us has seen this. There's a new Christmas movie he came out with, and I was kind of reading on it just a little bit ago, but it's called Candy Cane Lane.
Yeah.
And I guess it goes so far as to be blasphemous. I'm trying to look and see here. And again, I hate to say something when we haven't looked at it intently, but it sounds like they go so far as not to only not mention Jesus in the Christmas story, but to make outright statements that it has nothing to do with it. We'll have to actually look that up here in the next week, so we can talk about research. That maybe next week more in depth. But that's kind of the way that culture is going, right? It's not enough just to take out Merry Christmas and you've got to say Happy Holidays and or just hey, we get that you Christians over there are celebrating Jesus and stuff like that. Well, the rest of us are gonna do the whole Santa Claus thing, and you may be Christian and do the Santa Claus thing. I'm not saying you can't. That's your choice, but now culture is in a place that they have to attack the things that we do. It's they can't just leave us alone. They have to take it from us and then attack us for the thing that they stole from us. Which is
sounds like something white people would do.
yeah. But. So that's the place we're at. And so what is Christmas about, right? And so today we want to talk about something that's almost become an accessory. I think in many ways it's become an accessory, even for Christians with the holidays, with the Christmas story, right? During the holidays with the Christmas story, and it's the virgin birth, right? When we look at the virgin birth, its meaning, the reason behind it, I think many would struggle to tell you why. Why did Jesus have to be born of a virgin? Some may go so far as to feel like it's, especially outside of the faith, that it's just something that's been pulled from mythology, right? That there's deities that would come down and procreate in theology, and Christianity is just another mythology, and that's the reason. And, obviously we don't believe that, and that's not the case. And but there's a reason behind the virgin birth, and it's more than just the fact that it made a good plot line in a movie or a story or something like that. It's intentional. And so when we look at it, we're going to look at a verse right here, Luke 1:26. See if I can get all these buttons right the first time. There we go. Luke 1:26. Yeah. And we're in the New Living Translation. It says this: in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a village in Galilee, to a virgin named Mary. She was engaged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of King David. It says, Gabriel appeared to her and said, "Greetings, favored woman, the Lord is with you." Confused and disturbed, Mary tried to think what it meant. "Don't be afraid," the angel told her, "for you have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will name him Jesus. He will be very great, and he will be called Son of the Most High. The Lord will give him a throne of his ancestor David, and he will reign over Israel forever. His kingdom will never end." Mary asked the angel, "But how can this happen? I am a virgin." The angel replied, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the baby to be born will be holy, and he will be called the Son of God." And so when we look at it, this is the accessory to the Christmas story, right? We have all been, or most of us have probably been to the Christmas play, where we've got the young little kid playing Mary, and we got a Gabriel, and it's such a sweet, tender moment for us as parents as we have seen that play and been a part of it, or what have you. And it's single tear type of moment, very great, very touching, very moving. But it's not just that's not make believe. It's not just something that, even if you believe the word of God is inherent and true and inspired, it's not something God is like, oh, this will make it more dramatic. If Mary's a virgin, it'll really up the drama factor in the whole story of me coming incarnate to my creation. No, there's a reason behind it, and the reason is sin. And we can't miss that, because if we miss that, then we miss an element of the entire gift of Christmas, right? Christmas is about Jesus. It's about his birth. It's about God coming to us, right? His people, his creation, to save us, and save us from what? From sin. And so if we miss the virgin birth and the reason behind it, we miss an element of the reason God came.
Yeah, I mean, so and part of that, so the reason for that is that there's God is all love, right? And so, and we've talked about that, but God is also just, and so and God can't be a part of sin. God can't be sinful, and God can't partake in that, right? So that's what makes Jesus different, as far as someone who lived on this earth, is the only person that we believe in that had no sin, right? Because God can't be sin. He can't sin. So.
Yeah, unless you're Catholic and then you believe in some heretical thing called Immaculate Conception. And I'm not just harking on the Catholics, but this doctrine, and it's a false doctrine. Again, if you ever heard the word Immaculate Conception, it's a belief that Mary was sinless. It's unfounded in Scripture.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that Jesus couldn't be born sinless unless Mary was sinless, but Mary could be born sinless without her parents being sinless. I don't know how it works, but sorry to interrupt, Caleb. I just wanted to touch on the fact that some people believe there was two sinless people, but the Christians believe it was just Jesus.
Yes. Yeah. So just Jesus. So anyway, and so Jesus, like I said, Jesus as a person is God, right? I mean, but he's also human.
Yeah.
And so in order to do those two things, he can't have sin. He can't be a part of sin. And so he can't be a part of what makes us human, all human, which is our proclivity to do whatever it is the heck we want.
Yeah.
Regardless of what God tells us. And that's where we go back to Adam and Eve in the garden, where God gives them the option. And you're like, well, why didn't God just not do that? Why did God have to give them a temptation? Well, God didn't give them a temptation. He put them in a garden with a tree, and says, you can't partake of this. And part of that gets to free will, right? And so, not to take us too far away from the whole Christmas message, but that is part of sin, is that you have to have free will. You have to, in order to love, you have to be free to love. You can't, if I force somebody to love me, do they really love me? Like, love me, or I'm going to, club the sill to death, they're going to be like, okay, I love you.
And even that, if I tell you, hey, choose between A and B, and I take B away, and you're only presented with A, and you're like, okay, I'll have A?
Yeah.
That's no choice. That's
like, oh, you chose right. Way to go. Exactly.
So if you take away the other choice, then there's no choice at all.
Yeah, if you can't freely choose to love somebody, then you don't really love them, right? And so that's part of that principle there, is that, could God have just make us all automatons that do whatever he wants? Yes. That's in his ability to do. But that violates the principle of love, which is why he created us, is to have relationship and love, to exist in a loving relationship with him. And so if we can't freely choose that, then we can't actually participate in that. And so we had to be able to choose, and we chose poorly. Like what is Indiana Jones? The third movie? Anyway, I don't know if you've seen that, but it's funny.
I've seen all of them.
Even the new ones?
No, I have not seen the newest one.
No, good.
Yeah.
I haven't either. But so we
it's Disney.
Yes. So we had to choose, so be able to choose, and so we did that. And so through that choice, sin has entered the world, and through man's sinning, sin has entered the world.
Yeah, we've actually got the scripture on that here. We'll pop it up here, and it's Romans 5:12. So Caleb was talking about Genesis, the fall of man, but we see that narrated again here in Romans by Paul. It says, when Adam sinned, sin entered the world. Adam's sin brought death, so death spread to everyone, for everyone sinned. It's important to know that's what happened. So
yeah, and and the crazy thing about all this, and and this is the beauty of the Bible, I think, and this is what makes it unique. And I'm sure someday we will do a whole podcast about the Bible as far as a holy book. Why is it different than other holy books? Like the Bible's the same as the Quran. Like, well, no, it's not. Like, but the depth of it is amazing, and it almost seemed like it's God inspired, because the whole Old Testament sets up. There's a cool quippy saying that is so interesting that I can't remember it right now. It's like the Old Testament is prophecy revealed, and the New Testament is prophecy fulfilled. That's it. And so, even in the beginning, in Genesis, as soon as man falls, God alludes to the coming Messiah. That the Messiah will crush the head of Satan, is what it says in the. It doesn't say verbatim, but that's what he's getting at in Genesis, already pointing to a place for man to be justified back to God, and we see also in the fall why the way in which God starts to justify man back, because one of the first things they do is Adam and Eve realize when they eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that they realize they're naked. And so what's the first thing God does is he takes an animal, right, and creates skins for them to be clothed. And so that's a symbolism for what Jesus is going to do for us, thousands of years later after Adam and Eve. And so through that sin, through Adam and Eve's choice, sin has entered the world. But now we have to have somebody who is sinless, right? We have to have somebody who is just serve as a way to justify us back to God. And so that's where Jesus comes in, right? And because in the place up until that point, the Jewish people practiced the sacrificial system, in which they had to, constantly go and offer sacrifices. And it had to be, an animal that was clean, without blemish, right? Without sin is the symbolism of that. And so, then we get to, and the Messiah is to fulfill that. And that's what the Jews believed in throughout the Old Testament. They all, that's where, Christians and Jews differentiate, if you're not familiar with that, is that the Jews believed the Messiah was coming. Christians believed that Jesus was the Messiah. Yeah. And Jesus fulfilled those prophecies. And Jesus was that person that was prophesied about in the Old Testament. And but our God is the same God that we believe in. It's just that we believe that, like I said, the Messiah has come, and as the person of Jesus. And that person served as that blemish-free sacrifice that justified us back to God.
Yeah. And so we look at sin entering the world, right? And so we see that sin entered the world through Adam, death entered the world through him. And so when we go back to the virgin birth, right, that the reason being is sin nature was passed through generation to generation from that time, right? Adam was sinful, his offspring were sinful, the offspring of the offspring were sinful, the offspring of the, and so on and so forth. And everything was inundated with sin nature. It's broken, fallen, right? That's what we mean when we talk about a fallen world and fallen man. And so that was the case. But as Caleb touched on, from the very beginning, God had a plan and a purpose. And the plan and the purpose was the redemption of man through one man, Jesus. Jesus was the orchestrator. He was that's not the word. He was the means by which God would redeem mankind. And so we'll talk a little later in a different episode about how Jesus was not only the means, but Jesus is God. But the reason for the virgin birth is Jesus needed to be born sinless, right? Because we had the whole sacrificial system before this, and God gave people the law to atone, to cover their sins, and they would bring things to God, and that's how they would be made right and justified, and all of that. And Jesus was this plan of a once and for all type of sacrifice. That's why we're not slitting the throats of baby lambs on Christmas services here in the church. Praise God, right? Yes. We don't have to do that. Well, why is that? Why was that deviation from the law and the sacrificial system that we see in the Old Testament with the Jews versus the New Testament Christians that we have? Well, because the sacrificial system is done, because Jesus fulfilled it. He completed it. But he had to be perfect, right? We see that the lambs that were presented, right, for the nation of Israel, they needed to be without blemish, perfected, perfect, but they were always insufficient, right? It still had to be done on an annual basis for the people, and there was other sins that had to be atoned for throughout the year, right? Everything was insufficient to cover the sins of mankind, and so when we look at Jesus had to be certain things in order to cover the sin, and so he was sinless, so he could be made sin, right? And in order to be sinless, there had to be virgin conception, because we see that through God's word, everyone has sinned. That everyone is sinners. If you claim you have no sin, that you're a liar. All this because it's passed through man. Again, as we read in Romans 5, just as sin entered the world through one man, and it continued through that type of line. And maybe you're sitting here thinking, well, that's ridiculous. Is sin a genetic thing? I have no idea. But I know for certain that things are passed through men in society or women, and that's how God's chosen or allowed things to happen in other ways. And so how can we sit here and say that it doesn't take place this way? And so Mary is confronted by Gabriel, said, this is going to take place. You'll conceive through the Holy Spirit coming on you, even though you're a virgin. So Jesus was without an earthly father, and therefore did not receive the sin nature from an earthly father that all of the rest of creation does, because we all have dads. Whether or not culture says you can have two moms or not, you can't. There has to be a man involved,
right?
And therefore, sin nature is in all of us. And so Jesus, when we look at that aspect of virgin conception, it wasn't an accessory; it's a necessity. It's necessary for Jesus to be sinless, and for Jesus to be sinless, he had to be born of a virgin. And so we see that, and that's what takes place. And it was because of, again, sin nature and the depravity of man.
Yeah, two things. One, on the animal sacrifice system, and why is it that that wasn't enough? Well, the Bible tells us that God made us different, right? God made us, set us apart, set us aside, and set us at a higher level than an animal, and that the animals, and so while we use the animals, like the Jews used animals to atone for their sin, it was never enough, because animals aren't at this, don't occupy the same, I guess maybe divine inspiration, right? Because the Bible tells us that God made us in His image, right?
Yeah.
It didn't say that about the animals, right? I mean, as far as we know, we're the only beings here that have souls. I know that hurts some of you people, as far as but I told my kid they'd see their dog in heaven. They're like, well, I'm not saying they're not going to, but pretty sure that Fido wasn't the main driving force in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so while animals served as a sacrifice for us, they can never ever fulfill or justify us back, because we're the ones that sinned, right? We're the ones who sinned against God, and in order for that to be a sacrifice to be sufficient, we had to have a man serve that role, and that had to be somebody who was sinless, right, as in God. And so there's that issue, and then the other thing I was going to touch on was that, when Aaron was talking about that, it seems, how is it that, sin is, we're just born with kind of sin, right? This original sin kind of idea. And, a lot of people, and this is a tough point or sticking point with a lot of people with their faith, they think it's unfair. Well, it's unfair that mankind's condemned because of, Adam and Eve made a bad choice. Well, let's all be honest with ourselves. Like, you would do the same thing, right? If it wasn't that circumstance, it would be something else. And we all know that because we all have done something, right? We've all sinned, right? We've all had moral failings, right? If calling it a sin is uncomfortable for you, you can say a moral failing, right? So we've all lied at some point in our life, right? We've all chosen our own wants and needs over the needs of somebody else in our lives. We've all gotten to that place eventually. So, you can call, replace Adam and Eve with your name if you make you feel better. But I mean, all of us, like I said, it's just the way we are. We're going to choose our needs, our want, our will over others in some case. Now, can we do better? Yes, we can. Obviously, Jesus was able to come to earth and go through temptation and those things and live a sinless life. He did have the benefit of being God. That did help. But but I'm just saying, though, that you hear that a lot of time. People are like, well, you see people that step away from the faith or maybe struggle to come to Christianity because of that, because they're like, well, it's not right that one person's decision condemned all of mankind. It's like, well, it's not really. It's one. I mean, obviously it had to start somewhere, but if it for whatever reason, say Adam and Eve had behaved themselves, it escalated pretty quickly there, right? Adam and Eve disobeyed God as far as like what they could eat, not eat, and then in one generation we got people killing each other. So yeah. I mean, it escalated quickly, and so the idea that typically it's a cop out for people. They're like, well, I just can't buy into Christianity because why would God condemn mankind because of one person's decision? It's not one person's. We all do it. We would all be in that circumstance. If somebody said, hey, if you take this one thing, if you eat this one, this fruit or whatever, you could be like God, which is what Satan told him. There's a lot of people that are going to take him up on that offer. So. Yeah, that's just 2 points that I wanted to hit on there.
And we look at the fact that, I've heard that argument. It's unfair. Can it be that way? When it's like when we look at the sin nature, it's just in us. I mean, it's in our DNA. It's in our bones. It's from birth, and it's passed to generation to generation. When we look at the fall of man, it was the fall of creation, and that's one of the things we miss too. Not only did sin impact Adam, but it impacted all of God's creation. You look back to the garden, between animals, there would have been something that more harmonious. I don't know. I'm kind of like just reminded of a picture. Yes. I've probably seen it in Bible school or not Bible school. Like
lions laying down with the sheep and everything.
That's the one. Like in a Baptist Sunday school.
Yes. Jesus is standing beside him, like petting him, and whatever. And it's like,
and that seems ridiculous, but that's truth, right? There was no death. There was no death of man, but there was no death of creation. And so even going back to plants, I would argue that poison ivy, as we know it today, was not in the Garden of Eden.
Probably not.
Poison
ivy and mosquitoes.
Adam running around naked. Probably didn't have the itch. But so the sin nature was in everything. It's a hard thing for us to understand. And so when you look at man today, it's every cell of our being. Every molecule somehow is impacted because of the fall, and we see it played out in our behavior. But that's symptomatic of this underlying issue that's passed through person to person, except to Jesus. Wasn't passed to Jesus, and so it's a concept that's beyond just behavioral, in some form or fashion, to a degree that is beyond my understanding. At least, maybe you can find someone out there that can explain it to you better, but I can't. But I know it to be true because that's what we see. But we also see in Romans 3:23, it says, "For everyone has sinned," right? We all fall short of God's glorious standard. And so the need of God's grace, God's mercy is needed for all of us. And then he says, yet God in his grace freely makes us right in his sight. He did this through Christ Jesus when he freed us from the penalty of sin. And so we have a sin nature. It's inundated in all of us. We all fall short, right? That's the depravity of man. That's original sin. Whatever type of label you want to attach to it. The short of it is this: we all need Jesus, and then the long of it is Jesus had to be a certain way in order to fulfill the justification of God. Right? God is just; He's fair, and so there were certain criteria that had to be met in order for that to take place. If you get a traffic ticket and you walk into court and the judge just says, you know what, don't worry about it, you probably will really appreciate that, and I would too. But what the judge did there was not justice, and it's not right. It's not a righteous act that he did, though. If you're receiving it, it feels like that. Mm-hmm. God couldn't do that because God is just, right? And he is holy and he's set apart, and he can't do something that violates the law. The judge would violate the law in that regard, and they, for whatever reason, have some type of latitude in order to do that. But God can't. It goes against his nature. And so there had to be something take place that satisfied the just requirements of the law, satisfied the just requirements of God, and didn't go against the nature of God, where God could say, all right, you're good. And that was through the sacrificial system, and that was through Jesus. And again, Jesus had to be a certain way in order for that to take place. So it's we're all a certain way. We're all guilty. It's just it's in our DNA. It's in our bones. Everything about us and all of creation. And God, because God is love too. He didn't want to leave us in that type of condition, right? And he's not sending us to hell. We're heading that way, and God's like, no. I want to make a way for people to be saved, and so I'm going to present Jesus. But Jesus couldn't just be any man. He couldn't just say, "Oh, I like Ted over there.
He's a good guy." Or
he couldn't be like, "Ted's a piece of crap. I mean, he's not going anywhere in life anyways. We'll just put him on a cross,
That's right.
and we'll call it good because he's not going to do any good thing." No, it had to be something that would satisfy the requirements of who God is, perfection, right? I'm writing some material, and I came across this tidbit for it, and it said this: because the consequences of sin are eternal, the sacrifice for sin had to be eternal as well. Mm-hmm. And so we had to have an eternal God lay down his life, so they had to be of equal value, right? And so when we look at the lamb is not eternal. Caleb kind of touched on that, right? Soulless creature. It's a creation that's not made in the image of God. And even man was insufficient. And so to satisfy God, it had to be God.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I mean, and back to talking about the kind of the beauty of the Bible is that you see in the Old Testament, in the Old Testament, New Testament together, you see the nature of God, which God is all 100% just, which that's the part of God we like to forget about.
Yeah.
I don't. I like the idea of a just God. I mean, now that I have salvation, like, I like that because, it's like, man, there's so many people, there's so much, it's just, and this is the human side of me, is like, there's so much bad stuff that goes on. And I'm just like, man, I really want to see these people get their comeuppance. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be in hell to see them get it, but I'm happy that it's going to happen. So, you have just, right? God is just, and you see that really demonstrated in the Old Testament, where God is constantly, He's like, listen, my people, the people of Israel, you're continuing to not follow the law, right? Here's the law, and part of the law was to give the people just to say, look, this is what it takes, and this is how hard it is to actually be just. Yeah. It's so hard, in fact, that one of the first things they did was, when they had the law, was come up with laws to help you when you broke the first set of laws. It's like, which makes a lot of sense. But you see justice, God pouring out wrath when his people continued to disobey. And then when we get into the New Testament, we see love, right? God becomes, where God reveals his nature as, a loving God, and that, I'm going to send my son to die because, this is John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, so that we could be reconciled to him. And so, again, like I said, the Bible, as far as a holy book in itself, is so unique and so amazing in that, like I said, you see the two, God existing in both forms, which is a hard, like I said, sometimes we lose that, and it's so important that we understand that God has to be just. God is righteous. God is without sin. God can't be a part of sin because God is love and he's righteous. And in order to be reconciled back to him, to spend eternity with or in the presence of God, you have to be righteous. And the only way that's going to happen is through a righteous sacrifice that is equivalent to who we are as creations of God. So most of us probably haven't put that much thought into the Christmas story, and why it matters. And and all this matters because of Jesus' death and resurrection, right? If Jesus didn't die and come back to life, like, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
And that's why, obviously Christians celebrated Easter, what we would call Easter, well before we kind of had a centralized holiday to celebrate Christ's birth, right? So in case you didn't know that, Jesus was not born on December 25th, and that's okay.
Blasphemy!
Yeah, I know. Well, it's so funny. This is how petty humans are, right? Is that if you don't celebrate it, or you don't, if you say, well, his birthday wasn't December 25th, well, yeah, blasphemy. But if you do celebrate it, well, his birthday wasn't December, we shouldn't celebrate on December 25th because we don't know when his birthday is.
Yeah.
Just shut up.
Yeah.
Just let us have a thing, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging the birth of Christ.
Well, did you know that it correlates with pagan
Yes.
rituals?
Yes, I know.
So clearly you're worshiping Satan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know. Yeah. No, so you can enter into celebrating the birth of the Messiah because of his death and resurrection. That's why it matters. I heard an anecdote. Somebody was some college class, and some theology professor talking about the importance of the Christian faith or whatever, and somebody's like, well, let me ask you this: if a girl comes down from the mountains of the Appalachians from out of the wilderness and said, I'm pregnant because I'm pregnant from the Holy Spirit, and the child inside me is the Messiah, would you believe her? And the professor goes, well, probably not. He said, but being a good Christian, I would take her in, and we would help her and be with her as she gives birth to the child and raises the child. But then as that child becomes an adult and starts to perform miracles and then dies and is resurrected,
After predicting it.
Yeah, I would probably believe her then.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, it's like, yeah, it's like, so this is why the birth matters. Birth matters because, his death and resurrection matters.
Yeah.
Because, and this is the thing we don't ever talk about, is that, back then the Jews were waiting for a Messiah. They were, especially at that time, because they were occupied by the Romans, and so they were hoping, they were just like anybody, like, you a Messiah? Are you a Messiah? Anybody a Messiah? We would love to have a Messiah right now. They're waiting for one.
Yeah.
Here comes one who fulfills it's like 363 different prophecies from the Old Testament.
Something like that.
Some that are outside of his control, right? As far as where he was born or how he died. Yeah. Those things were, nobody asked Jesus. And so they're kind of missing it. And but he wasn't the first one to claim to be a Messiah, because anybody, as much as we have grifters now, they have grifters back then, and there was people who were trying to take up the mantle of being a Messiah, and none of them ever died and came back from the dead. So
yeah, when it comes to prophecies fulfilled, I'm going to butcher this, but there's something like if just for Jesus to have fulfilled 8 of them. It was like if you took the entire state of Texas and made it 2 feet deep with silver dollars or something, and you told somebody to go pick out just the one. There's just one that's got a mark on it. That would have been the odds. It's just like, that's insanity.
Yeah.
And that's much less 300 plus.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, Caleb said that oftentimes this is not what we think about during the Christmas holiday. And I'm not saying that you need to burn every, movie that's got Santa in it, or and Caleb's not saying that either. Or no tree, no lights, no, that's not what we're saying. I enjoy those things. I know his family enjoys those things. It's okay to participate. As long as it doesn't have your heart over the truth, the narrative, the reason, right? That Jesus as Lord and everything's first, including in this, and we can enjoy and participate in these things over here as long as they don't get in the way of that. So
yeah. I mean, and that's maybe we could talk about it more on our next episode. But yeah, that's something that drives me nuts too. It's like, it's okay to be Christian. The Bible tells us to be in the world, not of the world, right? And so it's okay to be Christian and an American. Yeah. Like those two things aren't mutually exclusive, but they're not. They're not also like. We haven't become God's new chosen people either. So, the Bible, like the Old Testament is still about Israel, and like I know it's one of your favorite things. Was it Jeremiah?
29:11,
where we take that, like, oh, that's God talking to me. Like, no, that's God talking to Jeremiah.
Yeah.
There's taking those things out of context.
About the exiled Jews in Babylon. So if you are a Jeremiah 29:11 fan, unfortunately, that passage is not about you.
Yes.
It's not about you. It's out of context.
Right.
Now, there's truth there that can be about you.
Yes.
And there's passages that were written to us as Christians.
Yes.
That say the same thing.
Right. Yeah, you don't need to take other things out of context. But we do that, though. We take, we're God's chosen people because we were founded on Judeo-Christian principles. Well, not necessarily. I'm sure, I believe God's blessed the country for sure. But point being is that it's okay. It's okay to there's part of society and culture is what makes us a society and culture. Our habits, our traditions, our norms, and our values. As we watch those things get eroded away, and so, if we want to celebrate, part of the Christmas story or part of the Christmas holiday is about some fat guy bringing us presents, and decorating a stupid tree, and about killing ourselves, hanging Christmas lights on our house every year. It's like I remind my children how much I love them. Like, I'm going to risk my neck, because we have this really high peak. And I've got this, somewhat suspect. It always feels suspect when you're on it. This ladder, that I have to lean against my house, and it's always an incredibly windy day that day, and I'm up there like balancing, and I'm not getting younger.
Feel suspect.
Yeah. Well, when you're as big as I am, they all definitely feel that. I'm not getting any younger. My balance and everything. I'm like, this is so stupid. Why am I doing this? But it's because it's important. It's an important tradition for us. It's okay to celebrate those things as long as it doesn't become the thing.
Yeah.
And that's keeping everything in perspective. It's okay for two things to be true at one time. We can celebrate our Lord's birth and have these weird, Christmas traditions at the same time without them becoming like the driving force.
Unless you do them before Thanksgiving, then you're going to hell.
That's right. That says that in the Bible, in the New Testament of that additional testament of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was one of the ones from the hat.
Yeah. Well, if you're not familiar with Mormon history, you're not going to get that, but I am, and I get it. I appreciate that. So is there anything else on that?
No, I think that's it.
So I did think of so we were like, I had an idea for a culture thing, but then Aaron hit me with, hey, we're going to talk about Christmas, and so I put that on the back burner. I'll save it for something else. But talking at the beginning, you're talking about what was it, Violent Night?
Yeah.
So that here's our culture for you. What's give me like your top 3 Christmas movies.
Die Hard.
Yeah, that's a solid one.
Yeah, Violent Night. Now, I mean, it's gotta be up there.
I'm gonna pray for you.
And I mean, one that I grew up with that I always had to watch, and I still love is Home Alone.
Yeah. No, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and if I'm going to take Violent Night off there, which I could,
You probably should.
yeah. Man, what is something I really enjoy?
Man, there's some really big ones that you're not even talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the.
I need to expand it to like 5
No.
to make you not seem like such a heretic.
No. I mean, I like as far as Christmas movies, I like Santa Claus movies. I mean, this is something I've just always kind of enjoyed that type of thing. And actually, like the Tim Allen, the Santa Claus, is one of my favorites.
Yeah,
it'd be
coming
on the
out with
list.
another one.
Yeah, I ain't watching that crap. They got horrible.
Yeah, the
I mean,
third
once you get
one's-
past the 1,
Yes.
2's kind of like okay.
Yeah.
The first one was great. I really enjoyed it.
I like that.
And they did.
Did you know that there in that movie that the elves, after he becomes a Santa Claus, the elves are all throughout the movie, like in his class, whatever the kid's name is, his annoying little son. In like his classroom, there's elves in his classroom.
Yeah.
And then there's like elves, like anywhere you see kids, there's probably an elf in that scene.
Yeah.
You just have to look for their ears.
Yeah, I've read that.
Yeah.
It's
Anyway.
great. And so I don't know. That's probably where I'd land right now.
Yeah.
Kind of caught me off guard with that, but
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'll give you mine. So obviously, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. That's number 1.
yeah, that is good.
That one's hilarious. I will watch that every.
need to watch
I
it.
watch it every year. Usually when I'm wrapping presents. So this is a unique thing about our household is I'm the person who wraps presents because I'm really good at it and Jill is not. And so
Janelle sucks at it too.
Really?
And and I think it just says we're meticulous people.
yeah,
And I'm perfect corners.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm an artisan.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do it, so I make Janelle do it anyway. So the kids are just subjected to crappy present wrapping.
So I'll put that movie on and wrap presents. Like I mean I even get like things to help me wrap presents better. Like I'm excited. I got this year. There's a little deal. It's a razor thing that slides down your.
Oh yeah.
Your wrapping paper deal to cut out. I'm like, I can't wait to use that. But anyway, so that's number 1. I would put, I think It's a Wonderful Life up there.
Yeah. You know what? I've never watched that.
Oh my gosh. This is a perfect indicator of how far our culture has fallen is that you look at Wonderful Life, which is, it's got a freaking angel in it. Yeah. and God. Now, I mean, obviously, the representation there isn't exactly biblically accurate, but it's a solid.
Yeah, you probably like The Shack too.
No, it's a solid movie. So you definitely should watch it. I'm ashamed to be next to you. And you gotta watch it. But of course, Jill had never seen it either until I don't think she's.
Janelle's seen it. We've talked about
It's very
watching
good.
it. It's black
And
and
then,
white. It's black and white.
they made a colored version.
Did they?
How old are you? Like 6? And then number 3. I mean, there's A Christmas Story. That one's.
That's good. I mean, and it's not one of my top, and I enjoy A Christmas Story. I mean, who doesn't like that movie? But I just wouldn't put
It is
at
a
the
little
top.
done when they do the 24 hours of Christmas Story.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you what movie is not on anywhere close to my top list is Elf. And I don't understand that. You people are weirdos.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's an adult man acting like a child.
Yeah,
That's wrong.
Because he
get it.
was raised in an abusive culture.
It's so stupid. I can't even watch. I've never been able to watch the whole thing. I've watched part of it. I've tried to watch it. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is the funniest, this is the greatest movie." It is not funny at all. I don't
that's
laugh at any of it.
The humor of him acting like a child is because he was raised in a culture that wasn't normal.
It's
So,
just dumb. It's
I mean, there's a level of abuse he suffered, and it's just I don't know why you're so heartless.
It's dumb. It's dumb.
It's dumb. Buddy would be ashamed of you.
I don't care. I'd punch him in the face.
I like it when
So-
the Norwal is telling Buddy Bye, "Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad."
On that note, so here, this is so if you're watching this on YouTube or wherever, put your top 3, in the comments. And
Yeah, and if it's Elf,
If it's Elf,
put Elf
find a
with
different
a middle finger
podcaster.
emoji for Caleb.
Yeah, you need to find someone else to listen to. That's what needs to happen.
All right,
But,
I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right, man. We're grateful for you guys, and hopefully you enjoyed this and you found the true meaning of Christmas on this magical episode that we just had. Join us next week on the 15th. We're going to talk about, we talked about the necessity of the virgin birth for the Christmas story. We're going to talk about the necessity of Jesus as God on the next episode, unless we change our minds between now and next week. But possible. That is possible. But we do, man. Like, share content, comment, with your favorite Christmas movies we'd like to see and hear what they are.
Maybe your non-violent Christmas movies for Aaron to watch.
Hey, Die Hard is a Christmas classic.
I agree with you. I don't have a problem with Die Hard.
All right.
Die Hard's solid.
He's never seen Violent Night, so he didn't even know. He doesn't know. He's a liar.
Well, it's in the name. It's Violent Night. I'm assuming it's violent. I've seen the previews.
I mean, the Santa Claus is a Christmas Viking.
Yeah.
That has a big hammer. I mean, what more could you want out of your Christmas movie?
I don't know. Family.
Yeah. There's family. He's rescuing a family, and there's a reunion.
Yeah.
At the end, it's beautiful.
I'll try to watch it. Yeah. Between now and this week.
There's embezzlement in it, and machine guns, and it's just all the things, all the Christmas. There's candy cane and a Christmas star.
So we'll see you next week.
We will see you next week. We love you guys. Thanks for hanging with us. We'll check you later. Bye.